I'm in San Diego.
All right. Okay, so namaste, greetings, and welcome to the REXperience School conversations that we have with inspiring authors like you every Sunday, Peter Merrick.
How are you doing today, Jerry?
We are doing fine. We are doing fine. The weather's very warm out here, warm and sultry down in Delhi. I'm in Delhi. Which part of the world are you in, you said?
I'm in San Diego, California.
San Diego, California. That's a nice place to be. And how's the weather up there?
You know, they have something called May, June gloom, where it actually, believe it or not, it's cool.
All right. So it's cool now.
It's cool. This morning, it's about 61 degrees. I'm originally from Toronto, Canada,
Right,
where in the winter it's cold, which
right,
I don't
right,
know if you've experienced winter. And in the summer, it's hot and humid.
right, right.
So I'm not complaining.
Absolutely. So this is your summer home or winter home
No,
rather.
no, I moved here just before COVID.
Oh, I see. Okay, okay, okay. All right. So brilliant. So welcome once again to the author experience conversations that we have every Sunday with inspiring authors like you. And a warm welcome to everyone who has joined us on Facebook Live to listen in to Peter Merrick, who's going to talk to us about his book today. So, Peter, to begin with, before we go deeper into your book about the King of Main Street and the other work that you do as a financial consultant, promoting financial literacy for people around the world, um, I like to do this with all the authors who we invite as
Yes.
our guests, which is we put you in a spot, and this is where we have not kind of shared the question with you in the set of questions that we shared as probable questions that we would ask in this conversation. But if I had to tell Peter J. Merrick, to get rid of all his titles, accolades, all the designations and positions and fancy things that you've been doing in the world for so long, and say, Peter, what are the 7 descriptors that define Peter J. Merrick, the individual? So the 7 descriptors could be nouns, adjectives, verbs, adverbs, values, principles, roles, responsibilities. There could be one word or a set of words. So, what would the 7 descriptors be that would define P.J. Merrick in the best possible way?
I'm going to define it. I know that you've asked for 7, but I'm going to use one word. But before I share you that word, and it is, Jerry, just one word,
All right.
because for me, it's so important.
Okay.
Years ago,
Yes.
I discovered Buckminster Fuller. He created the geodesic dome. So anybody who's ever seen pictures of Disney World and the round golf ball, he created that. And his life story was at age 32, he thought his life was over because life expectancy when he was born was 43 years old. He
Mm-hmm.
decided to make himself a project. And by the end of his life, he lived to 87.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote a book at 85 called The Critical Path.
Okay.
And the way he described himself is the most incredible way that I invite everybody to try it on.
Mm-hmm.
They said someone put him on the spot, just like you are, Jerry, and he said he was a verb. Now let's
he,
go and define what that means.
he was a
He was a
verb.
verb opposed to a noun. A noun is something that's fixed. So if you turn to me and say, Peter, what are you? And I say, I'm a financial advisor. I am a writer. I'm a Torontonian. I'm a Californian. I'm male. That means I am fixed. Human beings should not be fixed. We are verbs. We are in transition. We are in a journey. And
Right.
I didn't come to that. I heard Buckminster Fuller say that perhaps in an interview. I can't remember. But I said, I need to know something about this man. Well,
Right.
from 32, when he was completely down and out, he left the world being known as a friendly genius. He had over 200 patents under his name, and they still impact us in ways we don't even know. And
Friendly
it's because
genius.
the genius was, because we're all geniuses,
Right.
he never allowed himself to fix himself. So you're in India.
Right.
And that's where, and you were born in India, and that's where you started.
Right.
That's not where you finish.
Right.
So you and I can be anything we want, provided that we see ourselves being able to be to change.
Right, very nice. And change is part of life. Change is the only constant, like I say. So that's very interesting because I kind of connect this with my self-help books series, which is titled Mojosh Inspirator, and both the words are coined. Yeah, they are uniquely coined by us. And the first word is a combination of mojo, which is an African word, and we all know what mojo means, and Josh is an Indian word, right? So mojo is understand the unlimited potential within you, and Josh is act on unleashing that unlimited potential within you. And mojo an inspirator is inspire others to do the same, right? And in the book, I say mojo inspirator is not just a noun. It's not just the name of the book or the name of people who we would certify and train to become our master mojo inspirators, but it's also a verb because it's action in motion, right? Which basically means that it's a continuous process of evolution, it's a continuous process of change, it's a continuous process of transformation, transition, and a continuous process of improvement, because perfection is the biggest lie of the world. So how do you continuously improve? It's an Eastern concept again called Kaizen. I'm sure you're familiar with the concept, so I really relate with what you're saying. And and I like how you connected this to what Buckminster said, right? But if I had to ask you still and put you on the spot once again, what would the 7 descriptors be that would define Peter J. Merrick in the best possible way? So you said friendly genius is one possible way, and the second
Well,
is
no, that's Buckminster Fuller, not me.
no. Okay,
I'm
fine.
a verb.
Right,
Number 2, the one thing that has always helped me during my highs and my lows
right.
is I am curious.
All right. And
I'm looking at your office right now,
yes,
and I'm having problems staring at you, Jerry, because I can't get my eyes off of your bookshelf.
right, right,
I'm curious what you've read. I'm also curious, like I'll just give you an example. I was a ferocious reader. I'm less of one now, but I went through about a 25-year period
mhm,
reading 3 to 4 books a week.
right,
And something dawned on me in my 40s. I asked myself, Peter, why are you reading all these books? Because I was looking for peace in here and I was looking out there. And
right.
I'm thinking I could have just sat under a tree and that peace would have come to me. And that was, you're all you got.
Right, absolutely. You you
So
you are only
curious.
what you have within you, not what you have materialistically or the external. It's again the concept of inside out, and Mojo Inspirator as a book deals with that. And I can see that a lot of thoughts and insights kind of echo the thoughts and sentiments that I share. So please go ahead. So the second you said is curiosity, and
Curiosity.
curiosity is a very essential power because it is the trigger for all learning, right? And I must tell you, we researched over 5,000 books. We researched over 25,000 research papers from some of the best minds in the world, not just professors, not just people who've done their PhD, but students who are pursuing their PhD, because you get fresh insights from young students. Yeah. So we researched all these papers on academia, on ResearchGate, and then we put the Mojo Inspirator book together. We also researched around 3,000 near-death people who have faced near-death experiences.
Yeah.
So you said verb is one, curious is the second. What is the third?
Took me years to actually share with this, identify with it. I'm a writer.
Right, right.
I have to write my thoughts, and I just want to clarify why that is so important for me, and I think it's important for other people. We can have a thought for 20 years in our head.
Right.
And what is a thought? It's just thoughts and things are made out of the same things, but a thought is so much faster.
Right.
By writing it down, I'm able to take it out of here, put it in front of me, reorganize it, and put it back in my head. So
Right.
for me, writing is more than, when I say writer, and I mean a real writer, is someone, how they connect to their God, how they connect to the universal source. Because when I find the right word that says it,
Right.
there's nothing more spiritual, and it's almost like I'm writing a song because it's how the word sounds, it's how it puts together. So writer is number 3.
Very nice. Have you met before somewhere, or have you attended some class
Searchers
or
always meet each other.
right. Because everything you're saying, we explain the catharsis, the therapeutic power of writing in our book Mojo Inspirator, that no gadget, no app can ever replace what you do with pen and paper. Because when you're writing down your thoughts, you like you said, you connect with the God within you. You connect with the high energy spirit within you, and you let your thoughts and insights flow. And sometimes what you had probably never imagined, something which was unimaginable to you, becomes real to you. And a lot of people don't understand this cathartic process of writing. So I'm very happy that you shared that thought. All right. Okay, that's 3.
There's so many paths I can go on, but I'm trying to be disciplined here.
All right, very nice, excellent. But feel free to meander and go wandering on paths and
I realize I need people
okay,
because I'm curious, so I'm changing.
right,
I'm curious. I need to write. I need interaction.
right,
Once I get that information, I need that interaction with people. I'm working on a new book right now, and it's called The Dot Collectors, not dot connector, dot collectors. And the reason why I've come to that is because you cannot connect dots without first collecting them. And I've discovered that you have a different vantage point than I do. So I need other dot collectors, and we together can connect the dots. And right now in this world, with the craziness that's happening, and I'm going to step on a limb, there's nobody who's not seeing things that they could not imagine even 3 years ago that are happening politically, happening socially, happening medically. These things are crazy. Now,
right,
you have a part of the story because you're in India. I have the part of the story because I'm in North America. We together, if you share an idea and I share an idea, it's not that you lost one and I lost one. Now
right.
we both have 2 ideas. And
Absolutely.
maybe we can create a third, and maybe we could make infinity babies. And I want to share with you a little divergent on that, is that I call it infinite game players in my book and finite game players. And I just want to discuss what that is because I think it's so important for me, because this is how I approach the world, because I would say I work at being an infinite game player. I'm
Right.
human. I sometimes become a finite game player. Let me explain the terminology.
Sure.
A finite game player is, let's say we're playing volleyball. I'm just
Right.
going to use that game. I don't play it, but I can imagine it.
Right.
And my entire goal is to just spike the ball and get points. Well,
Right.
that's boring. I might as well play by myself.
Right.
That is a finite game player, win, lose.
Right.
An infinite game player is someone who says, hey, Jerry, let's volley. And then there comes Teresa and say, Teresa, join. And the fun is, and I don't know if I played a few times in my life volleyball. The best part of it is when it's just going back and forth and everyone's enjoying it, not when it's hitting the ground and a point scored.
Right.
Everyone's saying how wonderful it was. Look, it went back 15 times. An infinite game player invites people because they know by more people coming in, that's when the juices happen.
Right.
I know the best times that I ever have in my life
Right.
is when I'm at a party with people who are infinite game players, and by the time I leave, I'm going like I don't even want to leave.
Right. And I completely agree with you, because when we seek ideas, when we celebrate other people's ideas, other people's views, other people's opinions with an open mind, the mind is also calm to listen and understand. And instead of the neuron just getting fired, the neurons start getting wired. And I'm connecting it with what you're saying because I completely agree with this. It's what Stephen Covey in his book Seven Habits calls as synergy, right? And synergy is a result, is a byproduct of having a win-win mindset, not a lose-win mindset or a win-lose mindset. And unfortunately, the world is mostly win-lose, because you will see very few people in the world who are ready to share their knowledge in abundance with other people, because they don't like sharing the knowledge in abundance, because they feel that the other person's dependence on them would go low, or the other person might surpass them. So everybody shares knowledge in bits and pieces, but that's not the idea. The whole idea is that when you share knowledge abundantly, you learn more, you don't lose any knowledge. So I completely
Well, Jerry,
connect with what you're
I
saying.
just want to share something there. We're almost at 8 billion people on the planet. You
Absolutely.
don't need 8 billion people to have an incredible, extraordinary life.
Right.
All you really need, according to biologists,
Yes.
is 150 of the right people, because the human mind, for whatever reason, we can't really keep 150, more than 150 people in our network. And I just want to share with you, when I say biologists have proven this, is they
Right. Right.
looked at military organizations and Mennonite groups in America. And as soon as it got more than 150, they would sort of like break, or you could have spies get in, you wouldn't know the people. So the question is, how do you actually find those people? If you can find those people, you're going to have an extraordinary life. One of my favorite quotes is from Margaret Mead. She's the famous anthropologist. She said, "A few people can change the world. That's the way it's always been."
Absolutely.
I will put an addendum
that
to that,
that
Jerry.
that, that was Margaret Mead. And I always say that change in the world has never been led by the many, it's always been led by the few. It's those few people who make the difference, while the many are just sitting in apathy with indifference. I completely agree with you. It's Dunbar's number, 150 to 152 people
Yes.
in a
And
network. Yes.
I fell in love with small world theory. And that's one of the reasons, like, I went traveling around North America, meeting a lot of these authors. And I write about that in my book, because I had a question, but we'll address that in a second. But just to add to Margaret Mead's statement, like a few people can change the world. That's the way it's always been.
Yes.
That is so impersonal. I want to share something to everyone listening. A few of the right people in your life will change your world. You don't
Absolutely.
have to think that, like, oh, I wish I knew Jerry and Peter. No, you have your people. And there's a famous Buddhist story.
Mhm.
And again, I don't know if it's true, but the power of story is incredible. And the story goes, a young man goes to this very wise, enlightened man. He said, "What was it like before you became enlightened?" And he said, "I woke up, I meditated, I had breakfast, I hung out with my children, I farmed." So what was it like afterwards? And he said, "I woke after you became enlightened." He says, "I woke up, I had breakfast, I did my chores, I hung out with my children." The way he perceived every moment. So Jerry, if you were to ask me to give you a definition of Peter now and the Peter of 2020, because someone asked me that a question, and the answer that came naturally to me, because I've had to question a lot of my assumptions, because there's a pattern interruption within society, and many people are trying to hold on to what was.
Right. Right.
And they asked me, "Peter, are you happy?" This was a valid question. And I thought about it, and I said, I don't really think that. I don't think about happy or sad. I'm present. I'm the first time in my life I'm present.
Right.
I'm actually
Absolutely.
here. I'm in the moment. I said, that's all that really matters. Like, thinking about whatever happened in the past, that's fine. And what people thought about me, that's their business. What people think about me, that's their business. The future, I don't know about the future, because I have had so many great plans. And the best thing about those plans is they never turned out the way that I wanted. But wouldn't that be terrible if they had? Because why go to a
Absolutely.
movie why go to a movie if it ends up being exactly how it ran in your head? You could have
Right.
saved yourself money.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely agree with you. So, Peter, moving forward, we have 4 descriptors. Verb. Peter is a verb. Peter is curious. Peter loves to write. It's Jerry. So I said Jerry learns to learn, and you are Peter loves to write. That should be your website actually. And then you like to connect with people, which is related to your a book in the making called the Dot Collector, not the Dot Connector, but the Dot Collector.
Collectors,
Yes,
plural.
collectors. So tell me 3 more to go, and we'll make this fast because I'm looking
Okay,
forward to listening
I'm a
into your life
reader.
story. All right,
I'm a reader.
you are
I
a
need to
lead.
read.
Okay,
Reader,
and
reader. I need to read.
to be a good writer, it's very important to be a good reader, and I completely kind of empathize
You
and
really
relate
can't.
with what
What
you're saying.
happens is I just want to add, I read so much and I realized I'm sick and tired of being receptive to someone else's conversation. I need to add to the conversation. So I was
Absolutely.
having these pseudo interactions and arguments with people who were dead. So I
Right.
needed to actually put it down on paper.
Right.
So
I hear you,
I'm
but
a father.
there are times when I feel that it's best to be silent and listen, especially when you are in a room full of people who just want to be heard, and they may not be saying anything really important, but they just want to be heard, and it probably helps them to kind of vent and feel important. So I don't know. I mean, but I have a different take on that. But I hear you, yes. And then you said father. 6 is father.
A father, yes.
How many children do you have? Do
How
you?
many?
Yeah.
I have two.
Two children. All right, brilliant. And what are their names?
Kylie and
Kylie
Alexis.
and
And Alexis.
Alexis. Very nice. And what's your saner half's name?
Pardon?
What's your saner half, your wife's name?
Oh, Ronit.
Ronit. All right, brilliant. Very nice, excellent. And the 7th descriptor.
The 7th descriptor. Human.
Human. I like that. You're a man after my own heart, Peter J. Merrick. I'm so happy to have you on the show because I always say it's very important to be a human first, then whatever else you want to be, whether you want to be an American or an Indian or whatever. It's secondary. First, try and be a good,
Can I share
responsible
something?
human being, right? Because
I want to qualify that, Jerry.
yes, go ahead.
So I have young kids, and for
Yes,
years I hear people like you were talking about people like to talk, and I hear people talking about how their kids are so wonderful, so great, how brilliant they are. My
right,
joke is I want to see them at 40.
right,
That's number one.
right.
And number two, I don't care how smart they are. I want to know, do they have a good heart? Do they have
Absolutely.
are they helpful to people? Do they enjoy being kind? Or they could be the smartest person in the world, but they're cruel.
Right, absolutely.
I don't like being around cruel people because that goes back to being a sharer, right? Like sharing ideas. Like you need people to do that because there was a study you were talking about Dunbar, and
Right,
I don't know if it was in his book. Like I think it was Gossip and stuff. Like I can't remember the book that he did,
right.
but it was
No,
called Tit
no.
for.
When I spoke about Dunbar, I was talking about the principle of any network or any society.
Right,
They say it should not go about 150 members. Yeah, because
right.
failing which
But
the networking and the connection does not work. Yeah,
what I was sharing with you is when I really broke it down in my book about networks because I read maybe 300 books on it. I was like really into it, and I
right,
chased these people down. But there was a study that always stuck in my mind. It was called Tit for Tat. Have you heard of that
right.
study? It was a program that was done, a computer program in the 1960s, and they
Wow,
wanted to figure out what strategy worked. And
right,
the strategies were three. One was these bots would just attack.
right,
The second one is the bots would never attack. And the third one is they would not attack, but if they were attacked, they would attack. And the strategy that won was the one that they would not attack only if they were attacked. So what happened is the ones that attacked ended up, you know, destroying themselves because these selfish programs, which could be people, end up just being surrounded by those people. So you have to be kind, you also have to be useful, and you have to actually provide to your
Absolutely.
community. And
Right.
so to get rid of those people who are not givers. So, that's something I test a lot. I
No,
call it trading items of, the way I do it is I call it trading items of unequal significance. And what that means is I want to test you out. I have something that you might find of value. It's not going to cost me. I'll give it to you and I'll see how you react. Because if you're a sharer, if you're an infinite player, you're going to go and look in and say, I got these jacks I don't need. And that might be what I need. It might change my life. And
absolutely.
that
And
that's
that
what I'm always in search of.
absolutely. And I completely agree with you, because I always say, I started a movement called the Joy of Giving around 20 years ago, 2003. It will be 20 years next year. The movement has spread around the world. And for me, giving was never about giving a little money or a lot of money. Giving, the biggest gift you can give to people is time and knowledge, and share
Yes.
that time and knowledge, and, invest that time in people, because that's the biggest gift that you can give, because all of us have finite time. And if you can give time and knowledge to people, I think that's a big give. And I completely agree with you. I always say this, that most of us as human beings, we are just born as human beings because we probably made the cut of that 1 in a million sperms who kind of made the cut and came out into the world.
We're the best
Right.
swimmers on that day.
Yes. And the problem is, whenever I ask in a room full of people, and these are all very educated people who are top executives in corporations and UN organizations, and when I ask them, do you know what is the responsibility of a human being, most of them can't answer this. And I said, the responsibility of a human being is embedded in the golden rule of humanity: do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. So if you want someone else to create a better world, you also have a responsibility to create a better, safer world. And not because it's altruistic or selfless, because your children will live in the same world. So it's actually selfish. So do something for your own children. Create a better world for your own children. So don't think you're doing something altruistic and you deserve the Nobel Prize for that. Because if you're consuming from this earth, you have a responsibility to give back to this earth. And unfortunately, most people don't understand this, and they call themselves human, but they don't know the responsibility of a human being. And the fact of the matter, Peter, is that of all the animals in the world, and the human being is a part of that animal kingdom, of all the animals in the world, the only animal who does not contribute to preserve the earth and make it better is only one animal, and that's the human being. Mostly, not all, but most. It's the few, like I said, who are making a difference. And I'm so happy that our thoughts and sentiments resonate. And with that, we'll move on to the next segment, which is, I'm looking forward to listening into your life story now. So for the next 9 to 10 minutes, the virtual stage is all yours. The screen is exclusively Peter J. Merrick. So Peter, we want to know your story right from childhood, right from infancy to now, and what you've been doing in between all these years, and what are your plans going forward. So over to you, Peter. 9 to 10 minutes. It's 7:58 now. Take your time.
Okay, I'm gonna.
Yes.
You just jump in at any time. That's always difficult. Life is a journey. It's like I was asked, Jerry, a question that I thought was the most powerful question that I had ever been asked. And I once asked a great question, and this is going to get back to my life story. So the question I was asked is, there's a lot of changes that happen right now. And the person said, when did you realize that things don't make sense? And I thought about it. And as soon as I identified that moment, I said, but that was an awakening moment, but that I needed to have a past awakening moment, and a past awakening moment, and a past awakening moment. And I could go back, because there's those moments that we have to stop. Another question, the question I asked someone that was probably my greatest question, because I got the greatest answer, was I asked someone if he had wished he had made a decision earlier in his life. And his response to me was, no, I don't think about it, because when I was ready, that's when I did something. And when I wasn't ready, I didn't do anything. So not living into regret. So I'm going to share with you my verb story of transition. I was born to two parents in Toronto. Their parents were immigrants from Eastern Europe. They had come all in the 30s. My parents were, they had come of age because their parents had sacrificed for them. Like I had a grandfather who was a baker, and my father was one of the top CPAs in tax in Canada. So from a baker immigrant to someone who is, so I benefit from people who've made sacrifices. And as I get older, I used to look at my father and I said, this guy doesn't know anything. And I realized as I get older, he might have known something. And that, and I feel very fortunate that I was born to my parents, because I used to think they were very boring. Boring is good. And I had a very traditional upbringing, meaning that I had two sisters and I had my parents. Were we the most functional? Probably not. Were we functional on the scale? We were probably very functional. But when you're in it, you don't think it's normal, right? And there's a saying that everyone goes to the sorrow tree, they take their sorrows, they put them on the tree, and now they get to choose which sorrow they're going to take, and they all choose their own. I went to university. I was on my way to law school. I was very active in student politics, and something happened to me that pushed me in another direction. In 1991, when I graduated, it was the height of the recession, and there were no jobs. And I had friends, and I'm assuming that in India it's very similar, that when you become a lawyer, you have to apprentice, because it's like the British system for a year, and then you can write the bar. I had friends who were really bright, who had finished law school when I was going to start, and they couldn't get jobs. So I was working at a brokerage firm, and I started looking at these guys doing incredibly well, because the stock markets were crazy in the early 1990s, because the population was changing in North America, where the baby boomers were waking up to one day that they were going to get old. So they were saving money. And also the economy was changing, where people were not having jobs for life. So I got into that business. My mother was horrified. My father was happy that I was going my own direction. And that made all the difference. That was a change moment in my life when I decided to go on a path that I didn't know where I was going to go. And I was young and cocky, because I was really active in student government. Nobody saw my greatness. That's the one thing you find out. You're young, you should think you're great. But reality clicked in, and no one wanted to give me a chance. So this little kid found a little hole in the Securities Act in Canada that allowed me to start a mutual fund dealership. I got to be boss. It was the stupidest idea I ever had. Who would give a 23-year-old kid their life savings? My partner at the time, who's now managing about $500 million now, I remember we're like 24 years old. We're in our office. We were able to get cheap space in an incredible location, like literally like on Wall Street in Canada. And he walks in, he says, only if I was 27, people would take me serious. So he just turned 53. I called him. I said, only if I was 27, people would take me serious, right? Because now we're old men. So I went that direction. I wasn't happy with it. And I'll share with you, you'll appreciate this. During the height of the mutual fund business in Canada, the industry went from 24 billion to about $700 billion. And we used to go to all these meetings because, I was a starving guy selling financial products. I would go to these meetings, and what would happen is they would talk about their story. They said, tell our story. And I said, I don't want to tell anybody else's story. That was where my self-improvement started. I didn't want to tell anyone else's story, but I didn't know my own story. I sat down at that age and I wrote out what I wanted out of life. And there was something that hit me that actually was horrifying. And what it was is everything I wanted was to impress other people out there. And it dawned on me, no one out there really cares about me.
Right.
What do I want? And that took me on this crazy reading and courses. I learned hypnosis. I'm able to do medical hypnosis. I only use it when I speak in front of large groups because I'm able to really focus, and my writing, because I'm able to actually ask, what's my intent? And did I achieve this intent? And I understand that my neurology is the same as yours. It hits me, it'll hit you. And when we spoke earlier, that spiritual part. I was not happy what I did. I rolled the dice in 2002. I blew up majorly. And looking back, it was the best thing that ever happened. That was 10 years in the industry for me. I became a university prof. I read everything I could, everything, only because I didn't want to be a university prof. I wanted out of there. So I hated the books that they were teaching these kids because I was wanting to get back in the game. So I wrote my own textbooks, the books that I would want to read. And I focused on, and I realized it was succession planning. Everyone's talking about how to make it. What happens after you made it, or you get to a certain stage? And I got really fascinated and I started writing that. And then, Jerry, leading into this book here, I wrote down in 1999, when my father died, I found a book that was called Creating Your Future. I wrote down what I wanted and what I wanted to achieve. And I discovered it in 2011. I was blown away. Everything had actually come true, not exactly the way I wanted it, but I had forgotten about it. So I sat down in 2015 and I rewrote it. And what came out of it is, okay, you've done this and that. You want to write something significant that if you die, it says you were there. And what came out of it was The King of Main Street, the book that you keep on flashing. I read over 5,000 books. I whitewashed my life on this program, but can I say a word that's not terrible, but it's not the greatest?
Please go ahead. Feel free.
Life's a shit show. And
Right.
I've had a shit show. And and I'll give you an example. Everyone tells you that, when one door closes, another opens, there's a bloody hallway in between. And I wrote my life plan again after realizing what I had accomplished. I had designations. I was on television. I had been on television twice, 3 times a week. I had books. I had this life. And I sat down and I rewrote my plan in 2015. I said, I know what I need to do. I need to write The King of Main Street. Now, before The King of Main Street, I always had a publisher, and it was the academic legal publisher, which was LexisNexis. I said, I'm going to do this myself, but that does not mean I'm going cheap, because a lot of people who self-publish, they go cheap. I spent $50,000 on the editing. I hired the top people. Not to no one wrote the book. It's like if someone goes and says, Peter, did you have a ghostwriter? That's going to your grandmother and say, hey, where did you buy that food? She'd be upset, right? Because she is like, those are fighting words. Yeah. So, but for me, I wanted to make sure everything was accurate. And I want to share with you where we are right now. That book I finally finished it because I kept on editing and had 3 editions because I wanted to make sure there was no spelling mistakes. There were no holes in the story. There was nothing. That this book here would be as valid in 2019 as it was in 2050. And I finished it. And one thing that came out of it, and that's why I didn't think I'd have another book in me, was that book is more appropriate for this time now than it was when it came out, because it'd be inauthentic if it had come out now, because it talks about many things that we need to do. Those 5,000 books that I was reading, I wanted, and this is something I know this will resonate with you, Jerry. I know that you've read Siddhartha. I just can tell you have, right? Right. That's the greatest That's the greatest book ever. And my story of Siddhartha, the person who recommended it to me, I don't know who that person is. They changed my life. And it's a funny story, Jerry. It is so funny. I was starting broker, I told you, right?
Right.
So I go, I'm single. I don't even want to date because I have to spend money. I'm like, I have to pretend I'm in the financial field. I got money, but I have to sell to get commission.
Right.
But I meet this girl. She's in medical school. I asked her, we're going out at about 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And and I said, so, we're talking. She said, I'm reading this really incredible book. And I said, what book? She says, Siddhartha by Herman Hesse. I want to impress her. I go to the bookstore. I see it's not a big read. I read it. I'm like 26 years old, 27 years old. I read this book. I'm going, oh my God, this guy here, you arrogant prick. I'm saying to myself, you are thinking that you're the only person who ever had these ideas? Like this guy here, he's like, wow. Now what came out of it that date, I told you, I don't remember who she was. I would probably overwhelm her with my intensity that night. So I kept on reading that book once, twice, 3 times a year. And I asked myself, why are you reading this book? I asked myself in my 40s, why do you read it so much? And I said, and it came to me because every time I reread that book, it was an arc of life. I was in a different chapter in the book. And I bring that up because my book was influenced. I realized I needed to do fiction, but my book was highly influenced by 3 books. I'm going to share with you what those books are. Siddhartha. I also like the idea of Tuesdays with Morrie, not so much what was in Tuesdays with Morrie, but the fact that you had characters meeting. And the third one, which is the greatest book ever because the simplicity and the genius, is Theodore Gessel's last book.
Right.
For those who do not know who Theodore Gessel was, he's Dr. Seuss.
Right. Right.
And he lived in San Diego, and I go by his place all the time. And he is the most brilliant writer. And just to share with you how brilliant this man was, I just shot a video of this the other day, and I just posted it up on my YouTube channel. He was a propagandist in World War II. So he had to take complex ideas for the war effort in World War II against the Nazis and the Japanese and make them simple. If you look at his propaganda posters and everything, they look like his characters in his book. Now, what he did in 1992 is he wrote his greatest book that my kids don't like this book because they call it Daddy's book. His daddy would read it all the time to them after I read their books. And it was called, Oh, the Places You'll Go. And that book, he basically takes the complexities of life and how crazy it is, and he distills it to future generations, and he gives them hope. And what makes a good therapist from a bad therapist, what makes a good doctor from a bad doctor, is someone who gives hope.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree with you. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that, Peter. And lovely, lovely journey, a brilliant, beautiful journey, right from childhood to now, to finding your own path and creating your own path as a young leader in your youth. And I relate with what you're saying because I've just completed a book which is going to be published. It's already being edited now, and it's called Weekends with Zoe. And Weekends with Zoe is where a young 16-year-old girl who's on her deathbed and is going to be dying in a few weeks appoints me as a life coach to help her to cope with the rest of her life, and ends up sharing life and leadership lessons with me, including insights on issues that are plaguing our world and how we can have simple solutions to issues like child trafficking, crisis, the refugee crisis, etc. So several issues which we have touched in the book. It's called Weekends with Zoe, and Tuesdays with Maury is where Maury, who's a wise old professor, is sharing life lessons with one of his students. But here it's a young girl who's dying, who's sharing life lessons with me, and we brought her life lessons to life. So I hear you. Now tell me a little more about the King of Main Street, because you basically started writing textbooks first, which were all published by LexisNexis, which is a great publisher to have for textbooks. So what are the textbooks all about, and how did this entire concept of writing a book called The King of Main Street come into being? What inspired you? My first book series is called Karma Kari book series, where I write true stories of ordinary people who are doing extraordinary things. When I say ordinary people, they're more ordinary than me, at least. Yeah. Some of them have not even gone into a school or a college. But these people are championing change in our world every day, that they can put most of the educated people to shame, because they've unleashed their potential and they're making a huge difference in our world, right? While most of the people who get a good education or a fancy education in expensive schools and colleges end up just climbing the career ladder without really contributing much to the world. So Karma Kari, I felt that the youth and the children require to understand that the heroes are not the Hollywood or the movie stars or the sports stars. They are doing what they do, acting in movies, playing games, and making money. But the real heroes are people who are making an extraordinary difference in our world. So I felt like these stories of unsung heroes, underdogs, who the media or the news channels don't talk about, I need to mainstream and bring them to the fore. And I'm happy to say that many of the stories which have been featured in the Karma Kari books are now case studies and case stories in several universities around the world, right? Because these people are unstoppable, unbreakable, and unshakable. They are finding ways with their own resourcefulness to make things happen. So what inspired you to write The King of Main Street? Now you said there are three books which influenced your thoughts in The King of Main Street, and I love all the three books, or rather all the three writers, right?
Well,
Because
they were this where I grabbed my structure from,
right. So tell us the
because
central theme of your book and what inspired you. Over to you.
the central. Well, I have to tell you a story about how I got to it.
Mm-hmm.
So you asked me earlier, you put me on the spot, and I forgot to actually, the word that probably best sums up me next to verb, which is the verb to me, is scribe, an ancient scribe. As a writer, especially, I found myself in the financial world. I had a graduate degree in sociology, and I wanted to go and make money because I didn't want to be a professor. I wanted to actually get out there and get my hands dirty. And that I did in the University of Hard Knocks. So I started reading all these things that had nothing to do with finance. I would say I would force myself once a month. Out of all the books I read, once a month I forced myself to read a business book. Forcing, it's like you have to take like really bad tasting medicine. That's what it was. But I was interested in the humanities. I was interested in the curve of life. I was on the journey myself. I wanted to go and find the magic elixir for the peace in here, which I was looking for, which I realized you come to when you come to the understanding is this is who you are, and enjoy it, because it's going to come to an end and you don't want to miss it. And maybe if you listen, you might hear something. But I worked with some of the most successful people on the planet. And a lot of them were attracted to me because even though I was in the financial field, they would say, he's a writer. And a lot of these people, they had no education, but they were worth billions of dollars. And they were like impressed. He can put a sentence together.
Right.
And what happened is I wrote those books. I wasn't satisfied because every time I finished the book, I had another question. Now, I got invited to a group that happened in Toronto where the movers and shakers would meet. And most of these guys were like developers and, rough guys. And there was one guy there who's worth a lot of money. He's probably worth about 7 or 8 Bs. And he was dying, but he wasn't telling anyone. And he was showing up there because he needed a mentor, but he was really rough. He'd come to Canada his mother was divorced, he dropped out of school and he became a builder, and he built a big portion of the skyline of Toronto. And I couldn't tell this guy what he needed to do because I've been reading all these books in male aging. I became fascinated with male aging. I read everything. I spent maybe $10,000, $12,000 finding manuscripts on that because I wanted to know how to deal with these guys. But what came out of it is, the difference between the eater and the eaten?
Right.
Time. I was going to be those guys, and there was no way I could go and turn to Sam and say, hey, you're doing it all wrong. Like, he was still running the first race of life, and that's accumulation. That's gathering things. That's ego. And the second half, to be healthy, is to give it away. And no one talks about that in our society. You brought it up. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things. But our society, like, what do I care about Elon Musk? Like, seriously, it's nice he's doing that. Well, his cars are actually worse than gas. What do I care about, all these people? No, the person who teaches this immigrant child to read, that person is significant.
Absolutely.
Everybody is significant.
Absolutely. Echoes my sentiments. Yes.
So I felt that I had to communicate it. But this is the part you're going to find interesting. In my books, I didn't do them myself, my textbooks. My last one was 1,200 pages. I didn't write it myself. I brought in experts who written books. Now, there was one gentleman. He used to run one of the largest foundations in the world, and he went into semi-retirement, and he started running a small foundation for someone who made the pledge, who was a PhD, Pop Haddo. He was getting all the accolades because his father made billions of dollars, and people were like, they were thinking he was the firework when he was just the glitter that was coming off the firework.
Right.
But he had hired this guy to go and give away $3 billion, half of his wealth, because he'd made the pledge. And they had written a book, which the guy I asked to write a chapter in my book really had written, right? The other guy just put his name there. And it was called The Art of Giving. So he wrote a chapter, and that gentleman was coming to Toronto, and I pulled every bullet in my chamber to get in a small room of young leaders. And I was the oldest person. I was like in my 40s, and the rest of them were at university. And I go up to this gentleman, I introduce myself, I give him the book, I share with him that the guy who's giving away half his money wrote a chapter in the book on giving money, and this guy has just spoken on getting active in the community and being a young leader.
Right.
He looks at me, and he's in his whole life, things have been given to him because of who he was born to.
Right.
And he turns to me and he says, "You keep it, I'm not going to read it." I'm completely deflated. Like, I did everything to get there, but he does me a favor. He says something else to me, Jerry. He says something that changed my world. So as he was being an asshole,
all right,
he gave me the wisdom, not intentionally. He says to me then, "The truth is, I've been paying guys like you my entire life to read books like this so I don't have to." I stepped back. I said, I wrote over 1,000 articles. I've gone on this crazy journey. I have to put together a narrative that would let this guy want to write it. And then while I was doing it, I thought I was writing it for my kids. Like, if I had died, I got really obsessed with it. Like, it was like, this was my passion.
Right. So
and
this is like your legacy, is what you're saying.
It was my legacy project. Like, if I had died, this would be it.
Right.
I wanted to take everything I had learned, but put it in a story, and I wanted it perfect. I didn't want it to be like Game of Thrones. Like, at the end, you're saying I invested all this stuff and the ending's so bad. I didn't want that. I wanted something that, like, this would be my perfection. It would be simple. I wanted it to not just take things that people know, but I wanted to add to it because I dealt with aging.
Right.
because there was very little on what it takes to be healthy, because our societies focus on young, beautiful. They go to someone like, they go to some actor who, like, who are they? What have they done?
Right.
Justin Trudeau is a failed drama teacher, and
Right.
people are going to him for life advice. No, you want to go to someone who's actually lived their life, and they've been bloody, and they've been in the game of life.
Right.
And I wanted to capture that. Now, I was so obsessed, like, I mean, obsessed with it. You can see the cover. That's the third cover. I have another picture I could have given you that shows the iterations of them. Now, I got to ask you a question, Jerry. When you were growing up, you and your friend,
So Peter, what is the central theme of the book? If you had to sum up the
mentorship,
king of Main Street,
mentorship,
mentorship. All right.
mentorship,
And I like that because
legacy.
in the Mojo Inspirator series, we have an entire book on the art, craft, and science of mentoring, because a lot of people use this word mentoring very loosely without understanding what the science actually is.
Well, I took it from this. I spent my entire career telling people what things were. And now what I was doing is, by having a story, and I think I sent you the audiobook. I hope that you have a chance to listen to it.
Yes.
Because the guy who does the voiceover, I'm doing a plug, is one of the voices in the Call of Duty video game series. Wow. So a great voice can take a terrible book and make it listenable. A terrible voice can take a great book and make it not
right.
listenable.
Absolutely.
So,
I completely agree with you. Yes.
So I thought, I said, this is my legacy project, and I want to share something which I read all this stuff on male aging, and I asked a question to myself, which I don't think anybody asked with that prism.
Right.
And this is really important. I asked myself, these books that have sold 80, 90 million copies of these great books like Siddhartha, and you've got Alchemist and the greatest salesman who ever lived. You know those three books?
Yeah, the Ogmandino's.
Yes.
Ogmandino's book.
Well,
yes.
Ogmandino's one. The Alchemist is the Brazilian writer.
Paulo Coelho. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, so what I did is I asked a question that no one ever asked, and I'm going to share something that might be new and it might not be, because I think it's not for you, but for many people listening. I asked myself, when did they write those books? Because those books deal with spiritual, and they also deal with, bringing it down to the physical, the five sensical plane.
Right.
What happens is, in our 40s, what they call midlife crisis for men, is that they now are at the age where they're still young enough. They want to grab on to that life, but they also see that they're going to die. And it's a real subject. And some men handle it gracefully if they've done a lot of work. I didn't, but a lot of men don't. And some of them get cars, they get new women, and they sleep with prostitutes. This is what happens because they're dealing with that energy. And those three books, I asked, when did they write them? They all wrote them in their late 40s because they were at the last point when they were just become spiritual. Proof of this to me are two other people that actually I read about what they said, and I heard them speak it, about how powerful it was. One was Billy Joel. His last concert at Shea Stadium is an incredible story about what was happening in America and his story. And they asked him a question. They said, Billy, do you still write? He said, I write, but it's not commercial, because he was writing from the spiritual aspect, because that's what happens to the men. They become very philosophical. They become spiritual. The second person is Wayne Dyers. Wayne Dyers, in his book on aging and mentorship, his last book, or one of his last books, he said about 10 years ago, before he wrote that book, he stopped writing to try to bring it into physics and using examples. He said, I'm just going to be a balloon without a string.
Right.
So that's great, because that's where we all want to go. We can't communicate that to young people. That's what it's about.
Right.
So in the 40s, you got that energy, you know, that sexual energy, that life energy, and also knowing that you're going to go. And I knew that if I did not write The King of Main Street at that age, I could not muster up that energy or that internal pressure. And let me share with you the greatest insight that came from the book for me and why I love editing. And I brought in people because I needed to be my voice. And when you read it, Jerry, you're going to hear my voice, even though you're going to hear someone else's voice. Is I thought I was writing it for my children. And I also was getting excited that some young kid would get excited at small world theory or how to market or this little thing that blew my mind away when my own journey, you know, because, you know, when you're discovering something and you go, whoa, right? It's almost like your whole paradigm blows up.
It's that.
And I wanted to be the guy. I wanted to be the guy to do that to some young person. And I've had some great stories. And I also wanted to be able to talk to that older guy, Sam, saying this is maybe what you should do too to be healthy, not because I lived it, but I read everything I could find on it, and I found a way to communicate. I'm reading a line in it in the book during the editing, and I'm talking, I spent like 2,000 hours on the editing myself after the manuscript, and I hired 1,000 hours of experts to do it.
No, and I like that time and effort that you invest, because a lot of people kind of take some false pride in writing books in 3 months and 6 months, and they just churn out
book
nonsense.
Took me 30 years.
Yeah,
30 years. I could lie to people and I could say.
So Peter, I like you am a stickler. I wouldn't say that I'm striving for perfection, but you know, the idea is to make it as close to excellence as possible. And it takes me around 3.5 to 4 years to get one book out. Yeah. But yes, I do kind of work on
you want to leave
3 to 4
on the
books at a
and
time.
Ask yourself, you know where you want to get? And I worked on a video with these kids who wanted to do it for me. And the only thing I said to them, this is all I got for you. Make a promotional video. I want you, the best gift I gave to this young guy, 28 years old, is I say, I want you to get it to a point where if you do anything more, you only ruin it.
Absolutely. So Peter, at this moment, let me also ask you to then read a couple of paragraphs from your book. And I hope you have your book to show to the audience. And please read out a couple of paragraphs.
Okay, can you do me a favor?
Which you feel is where you expressed what mentoring is very eloquently. Yes. What is the favor you want?
Can you just put, because I'm going to grab it. Can you put that beautiful picture of the screen while I grab it?
Yes, please go ahead. Go ahead and grab the book. And for all of those listening in on Facebook Live, The King of Main Street by Peter J. Merrick is available on Amazon and at leading bookstores. And you've heard him speak about his life journey and what inspired him to write the book. Like I said, man after my own heart, because he puts in a lot of time, effort, investment into creating a book which is as close to excellence as possible. And a lot of sentiments that Peter J. Merrick has shared during this conversation echoes my thoughts, echoes my sentiments. It's about celebrating little the lesser known people who are doing big things to champion change in our world. And at the same time, the biggest legacy that we can leave behind is investing time, effort, and knowledge in people by mentoring them to help them to become better versions of themselves. So over to you, Peter. 2 paragraphs from your book,
Jerry,
before we.
Here is the book.
Yes, very nice. And I've already told everybody watching us on Facebook Live to please go and buy the book on Amazon.com or on any other websites where it's available. It's also available in leading stores around the world. Yes, Peter. Yeah. So over to you. Thank you so much.
So Jerry, one of the things that was really important is you asked, like I mentioned to you that I have 2 girls in my house, but I was once married before and had another child, and I'm giving you preface of that. But I want to read just 2 things that I did after I finished the book.
Go ahead.
The dedication.
Sure.
I would like to do. Okay. The dedication, because a book is not your book.
Right.
So the dedication is this. This work is dedicated to my children, to all children, and to the much younger, inexperienced me. It is the hard-earned wisdom I wish someone had handed down to me when I was starting out on my own journey. I believe it is infinitely more important and personally meaningful than any material gift. These are some of the discoveries and insights the older me have stumbled upon in my lifetime that may be of value to you as you venture forth on your own journeys. Life might be short, but your opportunities are boundless. Now, Jerry, I was mentioning to you that when I was editing the book, and I actually wrote this after I finished editing the book, I was saying, why are you so obsessed, Peter? Why are you so obsessed? And then it dawned on me. I wasn't writing this book for anybody else. This was an excuse for me to write a letter to myself through fiction. Because, you know, life I shared with you is a shit show. And I wish that somebody had handed me this book when I was younger. So it was a way for me to go back in time to put it in perspective.
Right.
And one thing that came out of the book is one person, a professional colleague, turns to me and says, Peter, you didn't have a mentor. I had many people who gave me instructions, but no, I had not a mentor, a sponsor. The difference between a mentor and a sponsor is a mentor might listen to you, give you advice, and send you on your way. A sponsor opens the Red Sea for you because they're invested in you. Everyone knows that you're protected by that person. That person will be your Ben Kenobi, and they'll give you the lightsaber, and they'll teach you how to use it, and they'll protect you. They'll give you air fire. I didn't have that. That was very valuable for the book, not for my life. Why? Because I was able to write what the perfect family would be like if I had it, because maybe I didn't. And that's where the mentorship. The other thing I want to read to you
Yes.
is the poem, which is not in copyright. So I was able to put it there. And I remember I shared with you that one of my favorite authors was Dr. Seuss, but Random House owns all this stuff, but he did not write my favorite poem that is similar to him. And it's called It Couldn't Be Done. And this I put at the beginning of the book. And I know that your readers and you will appreciate it. Have you ever read It Couldn't Be Done by Edgar Guest? I'm going to read it to the audience because I always get inspired when I read it because it was read to me when I was 12 years old.
Yes, please
by
go
one
ahead.
of my mentors and sponsors, Colonel Scott Bowman. He was a retired colonel in the Canadian Army. And it goes like this. It starts off, It Couldn't Be Done, and it's by Edgar Guest, and it's free on the internet, so go and get a copy from it. Somebody said that it couldn't be done, but he with a chuckle replied that maybe it couldn't, but he would be the one who wouldn't say so till he tried. So he buckled right in with a trace of a grin on his face. If he worried, he hid it. He started to sing as he tackled the thing that couldn't be done, and he did it. Somebody scoffed, oh, you'll never do that. At least no one ever has done it. But he took off his coat and he took off his hat. And the first thing we knew, he begun it with a lift of his chin and a bit of a grin without any doubting or quibbing. He started to sing as he tackled the thing that couldn't be done, and he did it. There are thousands to tell you it can't be done. There are thousands to prophesy failure. There are thousands to point out to you one by one the dangers that await to assail you. But just buckle in with a bit of a grin. Just take off your coat and go do it. Just start to sing as you tackle the thing that couldn't be done, and you'll do it.
Very nice. I put
that at the beginning of the book because I'm starting from a young character and I'm arcing from the age. I start telling his story when he's 11. Well, I start telling the story of his family, and then I arc to where he's 85 years old.
Right.
During the whole story. You know, like I touch upon it, and I realized as a writer, and I read about over 150 books on writing, you make a promise to the reader, and you have to start where someone is to take them where you want them to go.
Very nice.
And
And I completely agree with the poem and what you're saying, because, I remember Roger Bannister's story is there in my book. Roger Bannister is the person who did the 1 mile in less than 4 minutes, when medical science had said that, this cannot be done because your heart could explode and it could die, and you could die. Now, Roger Bannister's clip from his race was used in a advertisement commercial in India way back when I was in my, in my young days as a 7 or 8 year old. And this paint company called Jensen and Nicholson used to use this clip, and that line that they used as a slogan at the end of the clip always remained with me: when it cannot be done, it must be done. When it cannot be done, it must be done. And I think there's nothing which cannot be done if you put your mind that this must be done, right? So thank you for reading out that poem, Peter. And Peter, to conclude, I would like to understand from you, and this is like and since you are a teacher, you're a professor, and you've also done several textbooks, Major Brar had shared with you in the mail the storytelling tutorial that we are putting together. This is for young aspiring writers. And the tutorial basically consists of Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey, which a lot of script writers, screenplay writers in Hollywood use now. And the hero's journey basically is, broken into 4 parts and 12 steps, from the ordinary world to the call to adventure, to refusal, to finding the mentor and helper who helps you to cross the threshold by testing your allies and enemies, and then helps you to figure out the approach, the ordeal of going and dealing with death or with rebirth, the treasure to be found, and then the road back, the atonement, and the reward. And this has been used by several writers, including Harper Lee. If you see, she has used the same steps, the same 4 parts in her book To Kill a Mockingbird, which is another classic, which is a brilliant book because it has a very strong character-rooted person playing the main role in it, which is Atticus Finch, who's a lawyer who stands for everything that a lawyer should be, which is about being ethical, which is about being righteous, which is about trying to find justice rather than just practicing the law. So what is the approach that you used, right, to write your story, King of Main Street, and how could you relate to this? Because we had shared this with you as a
I actually love Joseph Campbell.
Right. And
I studied it because I want to step back.
No, just to complete that, every story also has a hero, a villain, and a victim. And when you say a villain, it can be a person or it could be a calamity, a man-made or a natural calamity, whether it's a war or a conflict or people being displaced from their homes. And then there's a victim, of course, the people who are facing their calamities. So who's the hero, who's the victim, who's the villain in your book? And how did you follow, since you know of Joseph Campbell and the hero journey, how would you relate your book and the process of writing to those steps, to those 12 steps?
It's interesting. I have 4 main characters and their archetypes.
Yes. So this is like a master class for young writers who aspire to write their book. So go ahead. The stage is all yours.
And where I share with you, the editing brought it all together. Like if I touch this book another time, I will ruin it.
Right.
Like I know that it's the best that I could have done, and it's time to go on. So the hero is a person who goes through growth, meaning that they are able to accomplish something that they could not accomplish at the beginning of the book. So, for example, in my book, or let's say Star Wars, Luke Skywalker at the beginning of the movie could not destroy the Death Star. So he has to go through that arc. Apollo 13, Tom Hanks could have saved the astronauts. So that was a great movie at a theme park. but a real growth story was Joseph Campbell said that that was probably the greatest hero's journey ever put on screen, the first movie. So I was influenced by Joseph Campbell, but more importantly, Herman Hesse was the real Joseph Campbell for the hero journey. And why? Because Herman Hesse wrote in 1922, he wrote Siddhartha, but very few people know that he had a therapist. And you know who his therapist was? Carl Jung.
All right.
Carl Jung is the reason for the hero's journey, because Joseph Campbell was a student of Carl Jung who he regretted never meeting. But Herman Hesse had followed that arc, and I followed that arc, and the purpose of events that happen out there are to actually solve a problem here.
Right.
So the hero is a gentleman named Michael, and his self-doubt, his insecurity, his past, everything are the villain. His reasoning for wanting to achieve greatness is that victim of like being born in poor circumstances. And the boon, the prize, is not only him becoming comfortable with who he is in his little place in the universe. He now recognizes for him to be healthy, he needs to go and embark on the most important role. And people don't understand this is the most important role. It's the most selfish role as well. And that is mentoring younger people. None of us are where we are without somebody doing something. And I'll share a story that you've definitely heard of. Andrew Carnegie came to America, a poor boy from Scotland, but there was a very wealthy man who opened up his library, and he read and read and read. And through that reading and having his mind exposed to things that he would not normally have, and I'm going to leave this with your listeners or your viewers, he was able to amass and become the wealthiest man in the world when he sold his business in 1901. It showed how much he was worth. But what he did with that wealth is he had over 2,000 libraries created, giving knowledge. And he wrote an essay before we knew he was the richest man. It was called The Gospel of Wealth in 1898. And he lays out what health would be. And he was saying his responsibility was to give it all away. And what that is about is we know through story. Why do older people tell stories? Because they want to be remembered. They want the legacy. I wrote The King of Main Street. A critical moment for me happened is I was on the 69th floor of a building in Toronto with a bunch of tax lawyers, because my expertise is succession planning, selling businesses, prepping them. And they're all talking code languages from the Income Tax Act. And I'm looking out at the building and I said, who built this building? I knew who built the building I was in, but I started looking at these other towers that were like 60, 70 stories. Who built those buildings? No one knew. And then it dawned on me. I know who Herman Hesse is. I know who Eric Hoffer is. I know who Thornton is. And I know who William Shakespeare is. I know who these people are. They transcended death. And it was at that moment I said, that's not something that's in my wheelhouse, but possible. But I want to share something with you, which I put at the beginning of the book, and it's a tease. I tell the story of Moby Dick, and I did that as a message for me. I believe that this was the best work that I was able to do at the time, and I'm completely satisfied with it. And I've been fortunate to have other people to say that they were satisfied too.
Very
However,
nice.
the story of Moby Dick, most people don't know it. But the story is that Melville was quite successful with 2 novels. And then in 1851, he came out with Moby Dick, his great work. 3,300 copies were printed both in the UK and in America. Only 570 sold in his lifetime. It came out in 1851. He never wrote another novel. He died 40 years later. Could you imagine? 40 years later, and only 570 copies had been sold. He died in 1891. In 1923, D.H. Lawrence, who is the greatest writer of the early 20th century, writes a book on great American literature. And he says the greatest novel ever written in America is Moby Dick. He, D.H. Lawrence, he had found a copy of one of the 570 books that had been sold. Melville had already been dead for 32 years. His book had been published 72 years before. When you do something, and this was a message to me, and it was a great lesson that I was telling myself. If you know what you do is great for you and you've done your best, you might never get other people giving you accolades. And I now sit back and I think of Melville. I know that he thought that he did his best. And not everything that you do is going to be noticed. But however, the people around you, it will be noticed. And those are the people you can make your difference. And I realize that. And I'll leave you one quick story, and I'll leave it with you. I would hand out my book because my book, I have a back end. I sell businesses. And this book here, it's very successful older men, and the book tells them what they should be thinking about philanthropy and things like that. But I would hand them out. I was on the subway in Toronto, and about 3 years ago, I'm talking to this young gentleman, very intense, very eager to learn. He's going to his brother's place. He's getting a master's in computer science. He doesn't have a father. He's an immigrant from Kenya. And I look at him, and I shared with you, this was the book I wish someone had given me. And I said, I don't know if this will help you, but I handed it to him. And about 3 weeks ago, he called me up and he said, for the first year and a half, I didn't read that book. But then I read it and I couldn't stop. And it changed my life because Harold in the book became my mentor. And to me, that was more valuable than if the book had sold 10 million copies, because
Absolutely.
it's
Absolutely.
not about a crowd of people. It's about individuals connecting with individuals. And who doesn't want to feel that they haven't? The number one goals, I think, in life are to be kind and to be useful. And that's what I think is important, that we should all strive towards, to be useful.
I hear you, because a few years ago, I started working on a book concept called Karma Kari Karishma, the Miracle. And the premise of the book is that in life, no one is bereft of suffering. So at some point in many, we all break. But when broken, do we give up and break down? Or do we choose to persevere with grit, resilience, and break through? That defines us. You break down, game over. You break through, game on. And I just put this up on my LinkedIn, and the same day, it was past midnight, late in the night, and I get a message from a person who says to me that I was contemplating suicide today. But when I read this one quote that you put up on your LinkedIn, it made me think again about taking my own life. And no, I don't want to die. I want to live. And I can face whatever comes my way. So I completely hear you and I'm listening to you when you say that even one thought in your book, forget the book, even one thought or one character in your book, if that can connect and make a difference in someone's life, I think that's a life well lived, that's a book well written. And it's not about how many copies you sell, because everyone writes mythological novels in India and all over, and probably sell millions of books. But I think the intent should be very pure about why you want to write a book. And I kind of resonate with what you're saying, because
Well,
when
can I share something to all your listeners?
yes, I just want to
Because I,
complete this. When I start,
yep,
when I just announced that we would be writing true stories of ordinary heroes, a journalist had the audacity to tell me, "Who will read your book? Write about some celebrities. Nobody wants to read about unsung heroes and underdogs." I said, "But the celebrities don't inspire me. The underdogs and the real heroes, the unsung heroes do. So I want to tell their stories, because I feel that the kids and the youth need to know these stories." And then around 3.5 years later, we happened to sign the biggest book deal in Asia. And I met the same journalist, and she said, "Well, I am happy that you stuck to your intent." I said, "It was not just intent, it was seriousness of intent, because it was about bringing the stories to life." And I said, "What has happened is not because of my writing, it's because the stories of the heroes are so powerful that has made this book deal possible." So that's, yeah, it's very important that you are very, very strong on your
well,
intent and
can I
seriousness of
just,
intent. Yes, yeah, and please conclude, because I just want to share this with you.
I have one conclusion. So
Yeah.
for the first 6 months of COVID, I was stuck in Toronto and I was selling everything. My family was in San Diego. And I ordered 500 copies of books. And my expertise is succession planning, philanthropy, setting up foundations. And people don't understand that most people who are extremely wealthy, their foundations are created for tax purposes, right, in the States.
Absolutely.
And
More
the
to do lip
CRA,
service
sorry,
philanthropy.
and the IRS actually usually has their home address as the place of the foundation. So what
Right.
did I do? I researched some of the wealthiest people who had philanthropy in North America, and every day I would like take a bubble envelope with my writing, which hasn't changed since grade 3, and I would write a note about something about them because I did my research. Always do your research on people, and I would sign it, and I would sign it with my phone number. I sent out 530 packages to the most incredible, wealthiest, most successful people in North America. 16% of them actually called me back. And we had some fascinating conversations. Now, one of my friends, and I want to leave this with your audience, said to me, "Aren't you upset? Like, I spent I don't know, probably about 15 grand. And I was just doing it because I felt that the message was there and something's going to come out of it. I don't know. And the joy is not knowing, right? The joy is not knowing what's going to happen." And he asked me, "Aren't you upset you spent all this money, whatever?" And I said, "No, because the people who contacted me were the ones who were meant to contact me, and the ones who didn't weren't." And that's the exciting part of life. When
Absolutely.
you sell a house, you just need one person. And I know that I can only handle one woman at a time. So you just
Absolutely.
need one person. For every pot, there's a lid. And that is where I want to conclude. My book might be for somebody and it might not be for someone else. And for the person it is, I invite them to connect to me on LinkedIn, to go to my YouTube page. And, I have my contact information in the book. I invite it because you asked me a question and I like engaging, because you might have something, an understanding that I don't, and I might have an understanding because of my perspective, my life journey, my vantage point that you don't have. And together, we can solve the problems that face us. I can't say the world, because the world is your world and my world, but we can bring it together and make it a better world for us and
Absolutely.
those who join us.
Absolutely. It was a delightful experience having this conversation with you, Peter J. Merrick. And thank you so much for making the time to be with us on the REXperience Cool Convos with inspiring authors. I'm sure that everybody in the audience has got a lot of takeaways from this conversation. You have shared some very inspiring life and leadership lessons and thoughts on mentoring. Thank you so much. And I'm sure that the King of Main Street will touch many lives and make a difference in many people's lives. So thank you for making the time, Peter, and stay in touch. Look forward to listening into the audiobook also. I've read parts of your book that you had shared with me. Thank you for doing that. And if there are any closing remarks and closing insights you want to share with everybody,
Well, Jerry, I think what you,
three life lessons as takeaways, and then we shall close.
Jerry, I think what you're doing is great, because the greatest thing you can do is bring knowledge and bring light. And that is it. Everything is cured by bringing light to it.
Thank you so much.
This is the most important thing that any of us can do. And I'm making the assumption you and I are on the downhill journey right now. So the only thing we should be doing is to lift up the next generation, and what you're doing is wonderful.
Thank you so much. Pleasure. And my regards to Alexis, and Kylie and Ronit. And
thank you.
You take care and stay well. All the best.
You too.
Take care.
Thank
Signing
you very
off.
much.
Bye-bye.